Hi, it's Michael and Anthony here presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, with Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and get them to share their best tips and insights for you, the listeners. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. Welcome back to another edition of Small Business Banter Radio. Pleased to welcome in today Lisa Dwyer. Lisa has a fairly extensive CV. She's a dairy farmer and involved in governance for a number of agricultural and regional organisations. She can tell you about that in a minute. Welcome in, Lisa.
Thank you, Michael.
And also in the house is Anthony Turner, co-host of Small Business Banter Radio. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be back again.
Looking forward to chatting, Lisa. We had a chat offline last week. You've done some really fascinating things. So do you want to give the listeners just a little bit about your personal professional background to set us up for the discussion we're going to have?
Okay, well, I guess my professional background is actually in the Victorian thoroughbred racing industry. So I was in a management role there. Before being ambushed into the dairy industry via a marriage proposal. And since, so that was nearly 17 years ago. It was an offer you
couldn't refuse, right?
Well, that's what I thought at the time. And as a result of my involvement in the dairy sector, I have also become involved in a number of companies and entities, from public companies to statutory organisations. So very busy, but very much enjoy the breadth of matters that I'm now involved in.
So can we start with your, you run an 850 acre dairy property in the southwest of Victoria. So that's your core day-to-day business or business interest. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And how did, you got put an offer you couldn't refuse and you learned quickly about dairy farming?
Yes, well, in fact, it's an interesting story how all of that evolved. And in fact, we were on our honeymoon. We had a 10-day honeymoon, and my mother-in-law rang, and that's not generally the person that you want to hear from on your honeymoon. And particularly when she then went on to say that the family farm had been sold, and my brand new husband was running that farm. And so there we were, newly married with a now unemployed husband. And so we were trying to figure out, well, what the hell were we going to do? Canvassed a few alternative ideas, but it was dairy where we ended up pursuing. And of course, the getting into dairy is not an easy task, particularly when you are very low on capital. And it was only through a incentive via Rural Finance, which it was at the time, who provided a young farmers finance option that was made available to us on the proviso that I continued to work full-time off-farm for 3 years. So that's how tight it was. So not only did we not own the land at the time, not only did we not even own the cows, the tractor, which was secondhand, we didn't even own the milk vat. I guess what it taught us was to focus on 3 strategies, and those 3 were cows first, growing cows second, and 3 was repaying principal, even when we were using the overdraft to do so. And interestingly enough, 16 years down the track, those 3 primary areas of focus have not changed.
Like your company values or your business, values. Keeps you guided with what you're doing day to day.
Very much so.
Just tell us a little bit about the business today.
So we started out buying the tail end of a herd. So a corporate buyer had been in of a herd of 600, picked out all the good ones. We bought what was left, which was about 220. We called it our multicultural herd because it had Frisians, Jerseys, crossbreds, brown Swiss, anything was welcome. So we had very humble beginnings. And now we milk 400 cows. We were in a herringbone. We're now in a rotary dairy. So things have certainly progressed, and we're quite proud of our journey because it has seen periods of extreme difficulty through the global financial crisis, through drought, disease. We had a disease go through the herd. That was one of the toughest times I think I can remember. So, to come through all of that and still be here and still growing the business, we're pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So, from whilst you're building that business with your husband, you've also, in more recent years, I think you've taken on roles, non-executive director of Australian Livestock Export Corporation. You were on Murray Goulburn board for a period. And you're also chair of the state government regional partnership for the Great South Coast region. So fascinated, firstly, how you blend all those things. So you can tell us maybe how you managed to do that whilst running a significant business.
Okay, so how do I combine business ownership with the other roles that I have? In a word, poorly. And I think it's, that's partly because of my personality. I'm not a person who compromises. And as a result, that comes at a cost. And, and the cost, I suppose, is one of time, whereby I don't have very much time to do the things that perhaps I would like to do. So it's not uncommon to spend weekends, trawling through board papers, for example. However, when you are appointed to any position of responsibility, then you need to take account of that, be willing to accept that responsibility and do all that you possibly can to deliver on what you are responsible for.
I think it's very, very valid, Lisa. And I think a lot of businesses that I've worked with over the years tend to probably be a bit half-hearted, and particularly when they get into executive type positions. And when I say executive, I don't mean company executive, but more board executives, those sorts of things. Sort of more turn up to the meeting, read the paper, and do this, ask a few questions and stuff like that, but really don't have that same level of involvement that I think you've got into it. How do you see sort of the prioritization of the various things that you do? What's the thing that really floats your boat? Is the most heartwarming thing for you in terms of the variety of work that you do?
I think heartwarming would have to rest with the relationship that we have with our animals. So from an agricultural perspective, and in dairy, the cows that we work with every day, twice a day, a week, we are with them from hours after birth until they either finish in the dairy or they are culled for whatever reason. And so they are an individual. I know this sounds probably a bit silly, but you get to know each and every cow and you have this real sense of responsibility for their well-being. So that really is heartwarming. And then in the corporate side of things, I think it's the ability and the opportunity to make a material difference for the people that you represent. And that can be extremely difficult. It almost inevitably goes unrecognised. But, when I've been in boardrooms where there has been real crucible moments, and that was in particular with the implosion of Murray Goulburn, and I will point out that I joined the board after all that occurred. And so, that responsibility to make the best of the ruins of what was, in excess of a 60-year-old farmer-owned company, and to be able to deliver back to the farmers the investment that they had made quite often over decades was probably one of the things that I am most proud of. It really does go unrecognised because of the fallout of everything that occurred post Murray Goulburn. But to be able to return that investment to those farmers, that's one of the things I am really most proud of.
Yeah, that's good. That's really, really good, because I think there was a lot of people at risk of a lot of very big losses during that period of time. What do you see now with all of the changes? I mean, there's been some rationalisation within the dairy industry. There is certainly a lot of changes. I mean, we've obviously got all of the typical things of, weather-related and bushfires and all the different things that impact farmers. What do you see as the real opportunities for farmers today about how they can make successful, profitable businesses?
Yeah. Look, the opportunities, Anthony, are unlimited. And nothing frustrates me more than this ongoing negative discussion about agriculture. And I think that, we as farmers are often our own worst enemies, because we then wonder why it is that young people don't want to pursue agriculture as a career. And the fact is that the world's population continues to grow, and the population's desire for safe, high-quality, sustainably produced food and fibre, which is exactly what we do here in Australia, continues to strengthen. And as you've pointed out, the challenges that agriculture faces are certainly not going to dissipate anytime soon, particularly with regard to those perennial challenges of global trade, which we're seeing playing out in the media now, not to mention the challenges of climate change. My view is that Australian agriculture is entering a new era. And I think it's one whereby those traditional forms of agriculture, like dairy, like beef production, like wool production, will certainly remain important. But it will also be one where technology and new capital streams will finally dispense with those old hillbilly stereotypes, dare I say it, and deliver a much more highly sophisticated sector that will attract the best and brightest talent.
Yeah, interesting. In a recent episode, we had Sam from Cultivate Farms, and his business model was encouraging new farmers by buying smaller farms from retiring farmers, and it was a really terrific interview about trying to match make aspiring farmers with retiring farmers. And so, you see a lot of opportunity ahead. On today's edition of Business Banter, by the way, we're talking with Lisa Dwyer, who's a dairy farmer and also extensively involved in a number of public and statutory bodies. So we might come back to your learnings at the end of the interview about your learnings as a business owner and what advice you would give to other aspiring business owners. But in the next little while, I wanted to chat about your role as the chair of the state government regional partnership for the Great South Coast region. So can you tell us a little bit about the Great South Coast region and the role of the organisation that you chair?
Yes. So the Great South Coast region is the greatest region in Victoria, Michael. It covers
no bias.
No, hell no. It covers 5 local government areas, and and the regional partnerships was actually born out of a review that the former Victorian Premier John Brumby did back in 2015. And one of the key findings of that review was that regional and rural Victorians felt as though government didn't listen to them. And that was, I'm sure, a difficult message for government to swallow. However, to their credit, they did do something about it, and they established 9 regional partnerships across the state. And they are comprised of a mix of independent business leaders, community leaders, and government representatives. And what we are responsible for is engaging with and listening to the people of the region, and then reporting that back direct to the heart of government. And when I say the heart of government, we actually did that reporting process 2 weeks ago, and it is a subcommittee of cabinet where we reported to 8 senior ministers. So it really is an effective mechanism to be able to communicate what actually matters to the people of those various regions. So it's really a effective way of government understanding what's required in the regions, and it's also effective in that the people of the regions feel as though they are being heard.
Well, what are the sort?
So they are many and varied. One of the most common ones is digital connectivity, which of course has very much come to the fore over COVID. But ever since the establishment of the regional partnership, the digital connectivity issue has been a consistent one throughout. Some of the other priorities include how do we get a more equitable voice for rural and regional Victorians, and particularly for the disadvantaged, and also for the youth and women. And then the other area revolves around matters that are more economically aligned. So, some of the things that will come as no surprise, such as roads, for example, how do we promote high value agriculture in this region, as an example. So some consistent themes and ones that we are starting to get some traction with.
With the digital side of it, Lisa, what are sort of some of the real issues that you heard? Everybody talks about, we have these digital problems and stuff like that, but for our listeners, so that they can relate, what are the actual things that are going wrong? Is it stopping you from embracing digital into your businesses? Is it, how's it working?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is that, yes, there are still some mobile black spots in this region, as there are all over Victoria. But I think that there are 2 other fundamental barriers to achieving the potential of digital connectivity. And the first one is digital literacy. So lots of people feel that they don't have adequate connectivity, when in actual fact it might be resolved by a piece of equipment, for example, or being better educated in how to use the technology that currently exists. And the other point is affordability. So, and we've seen that play out as part of COVID, in that there are, numerous families who simply don't have the means to be able to provide for a laptop or a decent monthly internet allowance, for example, due to the cost. A lot of the areas in the Great South Coast region are reliant on satellite, and satellite is more expensive than other forms of internet access. And so I think that, that those 2 areas, so digital literacy and affordability, have often been overlooked. in favour of, it's just a bad area, or, government needs to make it available to us. So I think that they're two important aspects. And then the third issue is that until the world has changed, and, even from an agricultural perspective, when we're looking at things like individual cow monitoring, for example, where we're looking to be able to monitor water allocations remotely, where we're looking at the autonomous provisions that are now available to us, are very difficult to implement if you don't have reliable connectivity.
Yeah. What has been the response over the time of your involvement to that question you pose?
Yes. So it's an interesting one in that it requires both state and federal governments to come together to assist with. And look, we're talking big dollars, but the Victorian government did recently announce a Digital Now initiative, which was a $626 million investment. So I'm sure that will go some way towards resolving some of these issues.
Yeah. Look, we had a recent interview. We had adjunct Professor Warwick Powell talking about the application of blockchain technology to beef production, and again it just keeps reinforcing this that core infrastructure and training on how to use the infrastructure, how to access it, is just so vital. With the great South Coast region, the best region in Victoria by your words, what's happened in the last 12, 18 months with COVID? Have you seen more more movement into the region? Have you seen the local businesses flourish? What's going on in the Great South Coast region?
Yes. So I guess it's, the old two-speed analogy, if you like. Interestingly, one of the major real estate search engines revealed back in September that there had been a 300% increase on searches for real estate in the Great South Coast region. And
which cover like some of the major towns covered. What are they?
So we go from Hamilton in the north to Portland on the coast, right. Warrnambool, Camperdown, Terang, all of those areas. So 300% increase back in September, and about a month ago, Warrnambool and the Great South Coast region was in the top 5 nationally of areas for real estate searches. So. But on the other hand, we are a significant natural tourism area. So, we have some globally recognised assets such as the Great Ocean Road, the 12 Apostles, Budge Bim Indigenous Aquaculture Site was recently World Heritage listed, Grampians National Park. And as a result of all of those, there is a very significant visitor economy. And of course, we all know what's happened as a result of COVID. So, whilst this region is really pulling ahead because of this renewed interest in the regions, because of our preeminence from an agricultural perspective, renewable energy, we already produce more than 50% of the state's wind energy. It really is a region that's going ahead, but we do have and can't forget, some of those areas such as the visitor economy that are really struggling.
Lisa, just what would be some of your tips for our listeners? Because we sort of cover regional areas, across sort of Victoria, but also other parts of Australia as well. What would you see as some of the tips of how some of our listeners might be able to get involved rather than sitting back whinging and worrying about the changes, as you sort of alluded to before? How can they actually get involved about making a difference within their communities, but also on a much larger scale, so that they can get all of this digital infrastructure and knowledge that they need to be efficient and therefore profitable going forward?
Look, I don't think that there is any limitation on the ways in which you can get involved in your local community. And I think my advice would be to start with very modest expectations. And, when I started out, I was the secretary of the Macarthur United Dairy Farmers of Victoria branch. And, that was only about 10 of us, but that gave me a start. And so it builds from there. And I think, and it doesn't matter whether you are the secretary of the local UDV branch or you are a non-executive director of a publicly listed company, you must do your homework and you must go to every meeting prepared and you must listen to, the views of others and make considered contributions. And I think the other secret there is to always look for the lining within the cloud. Don't be, the negative Nelly, because I am yet to see anything that was achieved out of a negative perspective. So that would be my short summary.
Excellent. Lisa, there's plenty of pearls in there for us and those listening in. We thank you a lot for your time today. I can see why you've been able to start and create a great business. I just, you sound every bit like someone who would just, go through each of the steps needed and not stop until they're done. So power to you. It's been great chatting and we wish you well. Thank you, Lisa Dwyer, for your time today.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Anthony.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. Anthony and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact Anthony or myself, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Anthony and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.